I'm going to talk about digital art today, or at least show you some of my digital art, because it's a little bit different from what you probably expect. There's quite a conversation going on at the moment in the world about AI and the fact that you've got generative programs now that can create brand new art, but of course it's never brand new art. What it's done is it's looked through everyone else's art and put together what it thinks you're looking for based on a combination of all those influences. And the problem is, the original artists who created the work upon which the AI is based don't have any say in this. Well, at least they do, but they're not always aware that their work is being plundered. The other thing is, of course, that AI has to be trained to do its job. It can't create something completely out of its own head like a human can. It has no imagination. So you have to give it prompts, and then what it has to do is look for examples of things which it thinks you will like to see. And of course, the way it's trained is by looking at what other people have created before, what other artists have created. And that's problematic because, of course, all those artists' work is now being basically used to train AI to replace the artists. That's a bit of an issue, and certainly it's a big bone of contention at the moment in the arts industries. And certainly the big manufacturers, I mean people like Adobe, who, let's face it, are the industry standard for image processing. It's in their terms and conditions, which you signed up for if you have any of their products, that they can use your artwork to train their AI. You have to dig down quite deep to find the button to turn that off. But how many students are going to bother doing that? How many universities are going to bother doing that when they've got a mass license for all their students to use Photoshop or Adobe Lightroom or something like that? So yeah, it's always been a bit of an issue for me, so I don't tend to use those kinds of products. And most of the art I do is created with paint or pencil, or I do sculpture, or I build things, assemblage. When I have done digital art in the past, I've actually really made the point of trying to find software programs that actually allow you to do the job yourself rather than letting the computer do it for you. So I don't use any software that's got like smoothing brushes or any of those sorts of things, or something that will fill in a space for me. I want the work of actually creating the art. So believe it or not, I use an old 1998 copy of Paint Shop Pro. Now, Paint Shop Pro was a kind of alternative to Photoshop in the very early days, which then got bought out by Coral and became part of Coral Draw. But the version I've got is pre-Coral, and no part of it ever connects to the internet. Nothing goes to the cloud, in other words. So consequently, there's nothing in my artwork that can actually be used to train AI. And because I don't store any of my stuff on the cloud either, which I don't use any cloud-based storage at all, because I don't want other people looking after my stuff. I can look after my own stuff, And then if I lose it, it's down to me. But the point is, no one else can access it either, so it's mine. And what you'll see from these artworks I'm going to show you now is that they've got a kind of clunky hand-drawn look to them, but that's what I like about them. That's what makes them look like actual illustrations rather than something a computer's done. There's a marvellous British artist who goes under the name of Jim'll Paint It, and he creates all of his pieces using an old copy of MS Paint, which is like the free software that came with older versions of Windows many years ago, and he draws it all with a mouse. And I think his work is wonderful because it's got, again, that sort of kind of clunky hand-drawn look to it. If I go and look at things on DeviantArt, for example, and sites like that, a lot of the digital artwork looks very samey and homogeneous because people are using the same software, so they've got the same colour palettes and they're using the same brushes, and there's a kind of smoothness and you don't get the brush strokes, and you don't get the slightly wobbly edges to things because everything's smoothed out and cleaned up by the computer. So I love Jim'll Paint It stuff, and I thought I can do something similar. And this is the first piece I created. I called it the Ghost Collector. It's actually quite simplistic, as you can see. There's not a lot to it, but it taught me to play with things like levels of transparency. It taught me a little bit about colour balancing and getting the palette right. It was also my first experiment in actually pasting textures into the picture as well, because although a lot of it's hand drawn, of course I can collage a little bit digitally by grabbing bits of photographs or textures and actually putting them in, which I did with the tabletop. I wasn't overly pleased with the finished result, so I didn't do any collage like that in future. Oh, except for this, which proved to be a surprisingly popular print. My next foray into digital art was after a visit to San Diego Comic-Con. Now, Comic-Cons are amazing. I love the fact that everyone cosplays, and they seem to do it much bigger in the USA than they do in the UK. We're a bit too reserved, I think. I was impressed by the really good costumes, and also the range of different shaped people you got wearing these costumes. You know, people don't seem to suffer body dysmorphia, which is really good to see. So people are saying, what the hell, I don't care if I am, you know, hugely overweight, I'm still going to be Batman. And that inspired a series of prints based on people I actually saw at Comic-Con, and here they are. There's a Doctor Who and there's a Trek fan. There's a Buffy the Vampire fan, there's a Neil Gaiman type Sandman fan, there's a Star Wars fan obviously, and a Wonder Woman or DC fan, and there's also a Lord of the Rings type fan, and also a computer gaming fan. I can't even remember what the game was now that I based that costume on. Halo maybe? I don't play video games, so I don't know. But these again proved to be quite successful, and it encouraged me to try some new things. I got a private commission to do an archetypal British seaside holiday couple for a friend of mine, and he was delighted with it. And then on the subject of holidays, I found myself looking at old vintage travel posters from sort of the 1930s and 1940s, and I decided to spoof those and produce some travel posters for visiting other planets, and these by far were my most popular sellers. I've sold prints of these two posters all over the world, and who knows, maybe on other worlds. Now, having established a kind of style, I wondered if I could maybe produce a proper project from this digital work. So I started work on an as yet unpublished book of odd gods. In other words, some of the gods and mythical beings that are no longer worshipped. That was one of the provisos of the set, that I wouldn't choose any character that is currently still worshipped or revered. And I found some extraordinary examples, such as drunken Aztec rabbit gods, and I found little Australian Aborigine gods who were constantly vomiting, and I found a legend from one of the Native American tribes of how the earth was basically formed by kicking it into shape. So they basically played soccer, they played football with the earth until they got it round. That's going to upset the flat earthers. And it just so happened, in creating this particular illustration, I took screen grabs of the various stages along the way. So here you can see how I build up one of these pictures. Oh, and there's the Fachan. The Fachan is a Scottish mythological character who is essentially half a man, who lays about himself with a chain all the time and just generally gives people a hard time. The point is, there is a wealth of these kinds of characters available to illustrate, and I've done about 20 or so now and written the descriptions for them. Who knows, one day it may emerge as a book. In the meantime, I'm still learning, I'm still honing my skills, doing this particular form of very laborious hand-drawn digital artwork, and who knows what I'll produce next. Anyway, thanks for bearing with me on this video and letting me explain why I do things the way I do them. I will see you all in the next video. Toodle-pip. If you've enjoyed this video, then please consider subscribing, or click on some of these links to look at some of the other videos on the channel, or press the like button, or leave a comment. It would be lovely to hear from you. Any combination of those four things would be wonderful. Thank you very much.